Hello and welcome. The following discussion and demonstration involves a capability of NetApp system to provide disaster recovery of CIFS and NFS workloads to an instance of NetApp in a public cloud. I am Jeff Have, the consultant with the professional services team at Evolving Solutions. A couple concepts and definitions I kind of want to cover before we get into it. A storage virtual machine is where all your data volumes, logical interfaces, security, shares, and exports for each one of those volumes. A storage virtual machine allows for multi-tenancy within the same physical hardware, allowing for Active Directory domains, networks, and protocols, all on different storage virtual machines. SnapMirror is also a big component of this configuration. NetApp Ontap feature that is used to replicate data many of us know and love well. In this instance, the SVM configuration is also replicated to help with the disaster recovery procedure. The most common use of snapshot is to replicate data volumes from one NetApp cluster to another. This doesn't necessarily cover any of the shares that are associated, any IP addresses that might be needed, or any of the other CIFS servers that might be associated with that data. So in the event of a DR, you have to go back and either remap, or you're going to have to go and use some other solution like DFS in order to reconnect those clients to that new data source. SnapMirror is, to a large degree, the engine of NetApp's data fabric, allowing you to replicate from on-prem to on-prem, multiple data centers, from your local data center to, in this example, NetApp Cloud Volumes Ontap in Azure. And Cloud Volumes Ontap is a virtual instance of Ontap that's running in AWS, Azure, GCP today. And as well, the data fabric that NetApp talks about is essentially a way of accessing your data and a consistency across all those platforms. So you are running a version of Ontap in each one of those locations where you have your data. So you get the same experience, the same data protection options, and the exact same data connectivity solutions in most of them, with the exception in the public clouds you cannot do fiber channel, but you can do iSCSI for if you need block access as well. In the upcoming demonstration, the replication from a Ontap instance in our data center to a Cloud Volumes instance in Azure leverages an ability of SnapMirror to replicate both data volumes and SVM configurations. As part of this, because we don't have a stretch layer 2 between the two locations, the SVM network information has been discarded, and we will have to have a new IP address. It's already been configured, but a new IP address on the Azure side that's used to access the data. This also means in the event of a DR, if we were going to go down that route, we would have to update our DNS-A record with that new IP address in order for the system to function as the on-prem storage virtual machine. Again, if you had a stretch layer 2 between the two sites, you would be able to just go ahead, connect up to your same IP address, same namespace, and connect to the data that you would expect to connect to. A little brief overview of the configuration in place here. Again, our primary data center in this instance is going to be a Ontap instance running in our Hamel data center. A secondary data center here is out in Azure in US Central. We're using the SVMDR replication. It's going to connect up the volumes, the CIFS shares, the CIFS server, the SVM permissions, the whole container of the SVM as we need it to be in Azure when we do the DR. Both NetApp instances are running the same version of Ontap, version 9.8. This is critical for replication in both directions. Ontap supports SnapMirror relationship creation with a source being on a lower version and the target or the destination being on a higher version. And you can do a failover from your on-prem to your Azure in that instance. However, when it comes time to replicate the data back in the other direction, you will not be able to do that just because of the limitations. It's not supported configuration. In the screen to the right, the policy type shows the secret sauce of the SVMDR replication. It specified to copy the whole storage virtual machine configuration, and again, excluding those network interfaces because we don't have a stretch layer 2 between the two data centers. So we'll move on now to the demonstration. As you can see here, we have a file SVM that's running. We have some volumes associated and an IT share as well as some hidden ones. As far as the replication go and the relationships, we have a file SVM as a source and this file SVM DR, and this is out in Azure. As we go to connect up and look at our shares here, we can see there's a file in here. Let's go ahead and add a second file. And while we're at it, let's go ahead and add a new volume, just as a demonstration here, not to take too much longer here, but we'll just say this one's finance. And we'll say it's a certain amount of size, and then we'll go ahead and allow everyone access to it because everybody needs to see everybody's finance information. All right, now that that's up and running, we can validate. We have a finance share as well. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go ahead and update this relationship just to make sure we get all the latest folders and files associated. It's going to take a couple seconds here, and like I indicated earlier, there are different networks between the two, and you're going to see here that this particular network interface is offline because in this configuration, when you have an active instance on your primary, the DP destination subtype is associated and the storage virtual machine is stopped. So you can access the data, the volumes are accessible. You could get to that data if you needed to, but the SVM itself is not available while it's in this DR relationship. So now that we've got a copy uploaded and we can see that we've got 2 volumes protected, we'll go ahead and activate the destination storage VM after we stop our source and simulate a disaster scenario. So bringing the destination online still is a manual process, and right now you kind of want it to be. Once it's stopped, we'll go ahead and activate it. And we'll see that the destination storage VM is activated. And like I indicated earlier, I'm just going to use an IP address. I'm not going to update DNS and wait for everything to replicate up here. So we're going to go to 172.23.16.21. And we can see that we have a finance and an IT folder. And both of those files exist here. So now we've demonstrated we have the ability to go from our on-premises storage virtual machine that serves our files, replicate that data up to Azure, provide a disaster recovery scenario so that in the event you needed to do maintenance or you had an issue with your primary data center, you can get your data up and running really quickly and not impact your clients. One last thing to do before we are all done with this, the reestablishment of the relationship in the other direction, we'll go ahead and reverse resync so that any changes you make now are automatically replicated back to your on-premises data center when you're ready to fail back. So I just wanted to say thanks for joining me today. For additional details, or if you would like to speak to someone about NetApp SVMDR, Cloud Volumes Ontap, or if you want to hear how Evolving Solutions can help with you on your hybrid journey, please contact us at info@evolvingsol.com. Thanks again. Goodbye.